nervous because I'm here now.
Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm James Haskell here with my co-host Glenn Martin. Really excited to talk about the big news in Ravenstown. That is the 53-man roster. But before we do, take a quick second, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, give us a like, and of course, at the end of this video, leave your comments and thoughts, and then go ahead and check out our Patreon. All those things are in the description below. But let's dig right into this 53-man roster. Has some big news, some interesting notes to talk about, some unprecedented things, and that is Glenn's dog. She's a little excited. She made the team.
Yeah, she did.
So
she made the rookie team.
That's right. She's coming over to congratulate. But you talked about rookies, so let's start right here. The Ravens' 16-year streak is over.
Yep.
There's not a single undrafted rookie free agent that made the 53-man roster. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to be on the practice squad. But as far as the original 53-man roster, that streak has ended.
Who were the three that were considered bubble guys?
Right. So Tyler Huntley at quarterback got beat out by McSorley. And then, of course, you got Eli Wolf at tight end.
Yep.
And then the other – well, I think there was four, really. Nigel Warrior as well was in the mix.
True.
And Josh Nurse.
Yep.
So those four, in my mind, seem to be the most likely, and none of them made it. Which, once again, doesn't mean they're on the practice squad. John Harbaugh said that this year making the practice squad is very much like making the team because you never know when you're going to get called up based on COVID and things.
Right, absolutely. And I think we're going to see this around the league, a lack of undrafted rookies and maybe even some late drafted rookies get cut because this is a year where being a veteran is a huge advantage. With the shortened off season and all that, we know how – coaches said it all offseason. It's going to affect these guys, unfortunately. It just is what it is. So it looks like it has affected a few, but we never really will know how it would have been different had there been a full offseason. We don't really know. We can only speculate. But we do know that the 16-year streak is ending. But, that's okay. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see if there's a residual effect later on when it comes to us getting high-quality guys to come over because, Evan the agent has mentioned on our show before that, the Ravens have some clout when they call because of that streak, right? It makes a difference. So we'll see how that goes later on. But my next point is feeding into what you were talking about. McSorley's the third quarterback right now, not Tyler Huntley. So I have two questions that I want to get your answer on, and then I'll give you my answer as well. But one, were you surprised? And two, were you surprised that there's three again this year? Like, were you surprised that it was McSorley over Huntley? And based on the depth that we have, in cutting down the roster, was it worth it to keep a third?
Yeah, it is kind of a tough call because I think that both could have gotten through to the practice squad this year because as Coach Harbaugh mentioned in his press conference, how can you sign a guy to year 53 in a year where there's no tape on preseason games, there's no joint practices? He said, what are you going off of, news clippings from the reporters? How could you ever sign somebody else's player to year 53 sight unseen? It makes no sense. So I'm surprised in a sense that they kept three because I think one or both could have easily made it through waivers and gotten in the practice squad. Now, I understand that the situation, the style of play here leads to some people believing that, he's more likely to get injured, Lamar, because he takes more hits. But obviously we have, our own opinions about that and everyone else does too. So I'm surprised that they kept three only because I think they could have gotten either one of those two through to the practice squad. And then if Lamar is to get hurt and is forced to miss 4 weeks, then you elevate him from the practice squad following that game, and RG3 finishes the game in which Lamar was injured in. I don't see why, but we're also I wouldn't say that this is a set in stone roster either. So I wouldn't be feeling quite so safe if I'm Trace McSorley.
Right. So when we bring in Clowney, we can. I'm kidding. I'm just feeding fueling the flames here. I agree with you. I agree with you on a couple things. One, I definitely agree that either of those guys could have made it through their practice squad. And based on the depth that we had, man, it seems like a luxury that we didn't necessarily have to do, right, based on this year. And you were mentioning. I was also surprised that Huntley didn't make it. I felt like he had a lot of momentum behind him. Now, I'm sure he'll be on the practice squad, and we'll see what happens as he progresses as a player. But
maybe not.
Yeah, that's true.
If you're going to keep three quarterbacks, you're probably not going to keep a fourth on your practice squad.
I guess that's
possible.
True. But this year we have expanded practice squad.
Yeah, no doubt. And the thing that gets me is that people can say all they want that Trace could have a role in special teams. He just hasn't.
Yeah.
So I doubt he'll ever be active game day. I doubt he'll be on the game day active roster. So to me, it's a little bit of a luxury, like you said, having that third guy. And I don't know if it's a necessity, but
yeah, I thought it was crazy to me, and this is the last thing I'll say on this here. I thought it was crazy to me that they started making these comparisons to him and Taysom Hill when he came out, and they're like, he can have a Taysom Hill type role. I'm like, dude, look, I saw Taysom Hill in person. The dude is a freak. Yeah. I mean, he's a freak. He's a rare athlete. You can't just say, oh, you're a quarterback who's kind of fast. You can do what Taysom Hill does. It doesn't work. He's the size of a linebacker, and he's the speed of a Justice Hill, right? Yeah. So anyway, that's, I don't know.
He's just a versatile talent, Right. I mean, they use him at tight end, fullback, running back, halfback. I mean, what don't they use?
Right, kick returner, punt returner. He blocks punts.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure he could put him in at linebacker, and he might be able to do something there. But as far as some more surprises, I don't know how much of this is surprises. I know you kind of predicted that Jaleel Scott would make the team over Chris Moore, and I wouldn't have been upset because I do think he brings a little more on the offensive end. But Chris Moore clearly made it because of his special teams prowess, his familiarity with both the offense and the special teams, and he's a good gunner. He can kick return a little bit for you. But man, it is a little frustrating that we couldn't find somebody there that provides a little bit more on the offensive side. But
do you ever wonder if it will come back to, based on the changing of the league, the devaluation of special teams in general, do you think it will ever come back to bite John in the butt using some of those empty roster spots or not empty, those like depth spots, like the sixth receiver for just special teamers with that, they're giving up a little bit of upside where I think Jaleel's a little bit better of a receiver, but of course, Chris Moore is a better special teams player, but less happens, I feel like, today in special teams. Punters are so good. They're so good. They make it so hard for guys to return things and put balls in play. The kick return is pretty much gone. I mean, it's not a thing anymore. So do you ever think that, John really values special teams, and of course, that's down to his core, but I just wonder with the game changing, holding on to that might not be the best move. Not speaking to Chris Moore specifically, but that's just one example.
No, I think you make a good point because not only is the league devalued the kick return, but when you have a kicker like Justin Tucker, I don't think there's any doubt that on every single kickoff he could kick it through the back of the end zone and give the other team the ball at the 25 and say, you don't get a chance to return. So I agree with you. I think that the kick return job, especially that one, there's more value to a punt return job in my opinion because, it's hard to find guys that can do that, who can catch that ball while those guys are coming screaming at you, and also make the decision whether to call a fair catch, whether to let it bounce behind you, to wave off your teammates. There's a lot more decision making. Kick return, though, I agree. I think almost anyone could stand back there as long as you can catch the ball and kneel it. Now, there are kickers out there that are making it a point, and Justin Tucker's one of them, to kick it high and short, force you to catch it and make a return and try and tackle you before the 25.
Right.
And I think that's where Chris Moore comes in handy. He's a good cover. He's good at covering kicks as well as he's okay at kick return. They could put him back there if need be, and I think that's why he made the roster.
Yeah, so before we move on to the next point, the last thing I want to mention about this is as far as special teams go, as far as that goes, is Kenyon Barner was also let go.
Yeah. Injuries kind of beat him up,
Yeah, and of course he would have been in a special teams role as well. So let's move on to the running back room. We've talked a lot, ad nauseum about the running back room with good reason, right? Mm-hmm. I was proven right. I'm just going to say we both were. People were saying that there's a chance Gus is gone.
Right.
That would have been a war crime. A crime against society. If they let Gus go. Based on his production, you mentioned it in his first game ever, he had like 120 yards and on 17 games. First game in NFL history. The guy is a production machine. So our four running backs are, of course, Mark Ingram, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Justice Hill, who you and I both considered a bubble guy more than other people. That to me is also a luxury. But you mentioned something interesting, and I'm hoping you can kind of give a little bit more in-depth or give us a little bit more about what you're thinking. Before the show started, you're saying that this could be part of the wrinkle, right?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Because, of course, like you said, some teams will say, well, we got tape on the Ravens, so we have to keep changing as an offense. How do you see these four running backs being a part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the unique thing about this year is that if I'm sure fans remember last year's how much the Ravens used their three tight ends. Our third tight end had 30 catches. Right. That's insane. So everyone was expecting that, wow, with Hurst out the door, they're definitely going to find a replacement, and hopefully he can somewhat pick up the slack left behind. But they've chosen to go a different route. It looks like they're choosing to go 2 tight ends and go heavier in the running back room. And that could be Greg Roman's wrinkle this year because, as everyone's been saying the offseason, yeah, they had some tape on him after his rookie year, but now they got a whole year. They got the MVP target on his back, cover of Madden. They're going to have something figured out for that offense. So maybe G-Ro's just getting ahead of the curve here, and he's putting this, he's implementing this wrinkle to where he's going to use 4 running backs, maybe go to a full house backfield a lot more. I mean, it's hard to say what exactly they're going to use because if you look at just fantasy projections and you look up Gus Edwards, he's projected like 150 yards. I mean, if he's projected 150 yards, I mean, my point is, how can they get Justice Hill in the game? And what scenario would he be in the game? And I think that's the unique part about this offense this year is that he's going to find a creative way to somehow get all 4 of these backs in the game and keep them active because, I mean, let's be honest, I don't know how many other roles, Justice Hill can play as far as special team. I just don't know what else he can do to help the team. So they're obviously going to find a role for him. I find it hard to believe they're just going to let him sit there. So, yeah, I mean, this could be their ring. It's interesting because obviously Ricard has said that he's no longer a two-way player. They only have 2 tight ends, so his role is going to be expanded by a huge margin on the offensive side. But he's still not a fantastic route runner and pass catcher. Yeah, if you throw the ball to him, he can pull it in. I'm sure, he's 295 pounds and pretty athletic, that he'd be a horse to take down. But he's not getting separation. He's not going to be drawn up. I mean, other than a trick, using other guys as distractions and sliding him out into the flat as far as like a trick and maybe that. But other than that, I mean, it's just interesting that they're going to get rid of a guy like Hurst who hit our top speed as a tight end, and they don't replace him with anyone close to his athleticism. I mean, they replace him with a 295-pound fullback / D tackle. Right. It's a little bit interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you. The one thing I'll mention is that I'm interested to see how many times Greg Roman has these running backs in pairs, because we saw last year. I think I mentioned this before. We saw last year like the option, old school option where you had Willie Snead as the Lamar was going to keep it, pitch it to the running back, or come around to Willie Snead, right? Mm-hmm. But you could theoretically have Justice Hill in that role or J.K. Dobbins in that role. So who knows? We could see Mark Ingram and Dobbins on the field at the same time, Justice Hill and Gus Edwards, whatever the case may be. That'll be really interesting and I think really fun to watch, see what he does there. So let's hope that Justice Hill is not just a placeholder and a waste of a spot.
As long as they use him.
But according to PFF, if Gus is only getting 150 yards, which I would bet my house that he gets more than 150 yards, then – like you said, what kind of role is Justice going to have? So that's an interesting.
Yeah, why keep him?
Right. So on the stand on the offensive side of the ball here. Now you kind of mentioned this, so let's just go right there. The tight ends.
Yeah.
The other surprise, you predicted they would keep Eli Wolf as the third, right?
I did. I thought they'd go with a pass catcher.
Right, and I predicted the vet in Jarrell Adams. We were both wrong.
Yeah, man. Wow.
So 2 tight ends on the roster, Nick Boyle and Mark Andrews. Now, Crockett Gilmore is coming in tomorrow.
And we always loved his toughness. We always loved his blocking.
Couldn't stay healthy.
And I'll tell you why. Because I remember when he'd catch the ball, somebody would be hanging onto his leg, and instead of falling down, he'd be standing up in a still position as linebackers are just coming in careening and smash into him and hurting his back. It's like, man, he fights for everything. Yeah, they could end up bringing him in. That would be interesting. I know he tried to switch to tackle a couple years back, so I don't know how his weight is. I don't know what his athleticism looks like, but I
don't even know the last team he played for. Was it us? Did he go anywhere after us?
He did go one place after. I'm blanking on where. I think.
Why do I want to say the Raiders?
Wow, we both wanted to say it, so maybe it's true.
Yeah.
But here's the thing I want to ask Ravens fans, and this is the part that I find surprising. If Mark Andrews were to go down for even if it was just a week or a couple weeks, who's the threat over the middle now as a pass catcher? I mean, Nick Boyle, he's got good hands, but let's be honest, he's not
a route runner. He's
not known for his pass catching. So that's what worries me, is that there's no other option if Mark Andrews was to get dinged up, and that's why I predicted Eli Wolf, just because he's a pass catcher.
And that's where I think that not that it would be a direct compensation for what Mark does, but The only way you could cover up that type of a deficit would be to have those 4 backs in there and get creative with them, right? Like in the middle of the field and stuff like that. Not that it would look the same, but as far as, trying to mask not having Mark there. So yeah, 2 tight ends on the roster, Mark Andrews, Nick Boyle, Thunder and Lightning. I mean, they are exactly the opposite, except that they're both huge guys. And then the last thing on the opposite side of the ball, we both got this right. Got the slobber knockers up front right. All 9. Yep. We got them right. We're keeping 9 linemen. Last year we had 8. Right. Powers makes it. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's important to have depth in the offensive line. I think you look around the league, and when starters start, even when they're all healthy, it's hard to find 32 offensive linemen, offensive lines that actually are decent. So once you start adding injuries into it, it's just hard. So anytime you have quality depth, I think you got to, on the offensive line especially, you got to find a way to keep it. And I'm glad that they did, because they must like something out of Ben Powers. We don't see enough of them to really know what that is, but they've been trying him at center. They've been obviously giving him a lot of looks at guard. They must like something that they're seeing, or they're just desperate for depth. But to me, it's surprising that it looks like we have a lot of interior guys and not a lot of tackles, and that's the worrisome part. I mean, I see 2 tackles. Obviously, they're great, all pro and Pro Bowl tackles. But behind them, you got a guy Tyree Phillips, who played tackle in college, but briefly, and then now he's switching to guard. So now, if you ask him to go back out because of an injury to tackle, that's going to stunt his transition to guard. Right. And then you have DJ Fluker, who they brought over, who's been a career guard in the pros. I know he played tackle in college, but it's just interesting that they don't have a natural tackle. But I understand that it is hard to find. It's hard to find 2 good tackles to make your team, much less find more to back them up.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I thought that was some of the notes and news that we've been hearing is that Tyree Phillips is really making an impression on the coaching staff and is pushing to take that spot from Fluker. I'm talking about that right guard spot. Yeah. So some reports have said he's solidified that spot. Some people have said it's still up in the air. There's a lot of mixed reports coming out of camp, but my I don't know if I would feel confident, and I'll ask you the same question, but I don't know if I would feel confident going into week. I would feel confident that the coaching staff knows what they're doing, but I don't know if it were up to me. I mean, he must be, I don't know if I'd feel good about playing him week 1, live bullets. He's like you said, he's only been playing football since his senior year in high school. Right. And then he played in college. So he's his 6th year of football in his life.
It's crazy.
Right. And he's
doing a position change. Yep.
Yeah. So that's insane. So to me, I think I would like to see Fluker start. And then also the other reason behind that is because, like you said, we don't have a swing tackle. I think Tyree's our best swing tackle. So if anything happens, we kind of need him for that. So what do you think about that news that's been coming out? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, first thing is it's very surprising. I mean, any rookie that's going to make an impact is kind of a surprise, but certainly ones at positions like offensive line. I mean, we've heard for years that transitioning from college to the pros in the offensive line is one of the biggest jumps you can make in the sport. And then you talk about a guy who's not necessarily very experienced, and then you add the position change to the group. It's shocking, and especially when it's not like they don't have anybody at right guard that could step in that has, they got DJ Fluker, who's been around the league for a long time. He's
been a starter, former first-round pick.
Exactly. So, but what is exciting is the fact that if he's shown that he is the starter, then that must mean he has been absolutely incredible in training camp. I mean, he had to have been just off the charts. And what's surprising to me, though, is the fact that they didn't, well, we don't know how much they gave him, but I'm surprised they didn't give him more looks at left guard. And then obviously we've been pushing to bring Bozeman in at center for a long time because, man, just imagine the size with Brown, Fluker, Bozeman, Phillips, and Stanley as your linemen. I mean, your smallest lineman is 6'5". I mean, that's insane. So, yeah, and then they're all long-arm guys. So that would be – but, yeah, I mean, I'm excited because if Phillips is pushing Fluker and taking his job – he must look like an absolute monster. And for him to look that good as a rookie, doing a position change, I got high hopes for this guy. He might be on his road to a Pro Bowl in the future here.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I'm excited about the momentum behind him, but I would prefer at this point to see Fluker out there, unless he's just playing terrible. I mean, like you said, unless Tyree's lighting the world on fire. So let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. We have some notes and some interesting things that have occurred as far as two position groups, inside linebacker and then corners. But before we get into those, I want to mention one thing. Happy to hear Geno Smith made the team, 7th round safety.
Geno Stone.
Or Whiz, not Geno Smith. We don't want anything to do with
We don't want him now.
You can go back to Morgantown in West Virginia or wherever. That's fine. You can stay there. Yes, Geno Stone.
Yes.
Our guy out of Iowa, the safety with the negative length. Yeah, made the team. And I'm excited to see what this kid does, Glenn. You've got me excited about him based on some of the things that we've been talking about. I'm really excited what he can do, how he can show his instincts and his intellect. I don't know how much time he's getting on the field. I'm just happy he made it, and I think that there's a future there for this kid. I mean, Deshaun Elliott obviously is not the most reliable guy.
Right.
And it sounds like Geno's on the short list to get some playing time if anything happens to Elliott. Yeah,
I think he's a guy that is – it's interesting because you look at – when I watched, I think, 4 games of his, every snap of 4 games of him in college, and – he was asked to do a ton of deep third, which is what we're losing out having Earl gone. But he also was great at supporting the run. Now, I will say this. I mean, I'm sure that they're working on this. He's a big hitter. He likes to pop. He doesn't always necessarily like to wrap. And I did see some ball carriers bounce off of him and then continue. So I'm sure he's working on that. But, yeah, outside of his physical limitations, you mentioned his lack of length, but also his top-end speed not being great, he made up for all that with incredible smarts and instincts, and I never saw him get beat once in when he was in coverage in the deep third. Not one time, and that's USC games. I mean, these are all his biggest games that I was watching.
Right.
And, yeah, he looked phenomenal. So if he is able to overcome all those stuff at in college, then hopefully and maybe he can do it in the pros. Now, we know that the level of athleticism goes up exponentially when you go to the pros, but maybe he can just look, he's not a burner, but we've seen plenty of safeties in the past that aren't burners make up for it with instincts and smarts. So hopefully he can do it. And really, who else is there that you would want back there if Deshaun were to go down, which, like you said, is certainly possible? Who else would you want back there? Maybe Chuck Clark, but Chuck Clark's already has a role. So
right.
I think it would be interesting, and I'm rooting for Geno Stone, no doubt. But I want to move to another area on the defense. It was kind of surprising, the fact that they only kept 5 cornerbacks.
Yeah.
Now, we all agree that this is maybe the best cornerback room in the entire league, but as you can hear my dog barking. So they only kept 5 cornerbacks, which is surprising because last year they kept 7. And I know that the Iman Marshall injury, probably he would have made the team too had he been healthy, and that would have pushed the number to 6. But I'm surprised with injury issues with Jimmy Smith in the past, injury issues with Tavon Young that are well documented, and Anthony Averett's already been banged up multiple times this training camp. Are you a little concerned that 5 is a little bit light in the cornerback room?
I don't know. For some reason, I'm not nervous about it because I feel like we got Brandon Carr. Brandon Carr is sitting out there somewhere.
He just got brought in for a tryout for the Cowboys.
Oh, did he? Didn't he used to play on the Cowboys? Didn't we get him from the Cowboys?
Like 9 years he played for them.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't know. I'm not crazy concerned about it for some reason. I can see what you're saying. Just not concerned about it this year. Just my gut feels like
I would say Josh Nurse is almost a lock to make the practice squad, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's got to be. I mean, him and I'm not sure of any other corners. I know Warrior was a safety.
Safety, yeah.
He's got a shot. Oh, I would guess Jordan Richards maybe has a shot. Is he a safety or a corner?
I think he's a corner, yeah.
And then maybe Khalil Dorsey. I don't know, but it is surprising that they only have 5 corners in a league where we know that you're typically in nickel or you're going smaller than that. So the corners are on the field. Now, they kept a lot of safeties, and we know that Levine and stuff comes in. So I'm sure they can make up for it, but it's surprising they go 7 one year and then drop by 2 to go to 5 the following.
Well, and part of the reason, moving on to the next position group would be the inside linebackers. They kept 5.
Yeah.
5. So it's weird. I feel like the Ravens, John talked about they're going to zig when everyone else zags. This team is a very unorthodox roster to me, even by Ravens standards. Right. Like 5 inside linebackers, they must like them all. And that, this could speak to, if you're going light on corners, this could speak to the versatility of these guys. I'm not saying they're going to play corner, but I mean the overall versatility of that group of inside linebackers. It must be impressive, right? Obviously, we know that Patrick Queen is an elite athlete from an athletic standpoint. You don't need to see him on a pro football field to see that he's an athlete. Right. LJ Fort is a great open field tackler. So they got some guys that can move their feet, not just thumpers. And who knows? I mean, Malik Harris, everyone says he's a thumper, but a lot of people have been talking about his range as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was really surprised. I would say that was the second or third most surprising thing for me as far as the roster breakdown overall. What about you?
Yeah, I thought it was between Board and Alaka. I didn't think both had a shot to make the team. But I mean, they must value. It's interesting how the Ravens are deciding to value each position.
Yeah.
And it seems like they want depth at the big boy positions. The bigger the guys, it seems like they're keeping more of, and they're getting less of the smaller guys, I guess. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I want to also say this, and I said it earlier, that I wouldn't feel completely safe if I'm both Board and Alaka that I'm going to be on here for the start of the season. I mean, they're there today, but I don't know if they're definitely going to be there on Sunday. Because they could add another tight end. They could add, as there's been reports that the Ravens are the sleeper team still, negotiating with Clowney along with the favorites, the Titans, and who's the other favorite? Oh, the Saints.
Yeah, the Saints
and the Titans. So I think those guys are kind of still on the bubble, even though they passed the 4:00 cut deadline and they've made the team for now. But yeah, I think that unless there's an injury, I don't know how both of them play. So. I mean, we talked about with the film with Ken McCusick, they're in the nickel more often than not. So you're already taking one linebacker off the field then. Right. And then a lot of times they go to the dime, they bring Levine in as that other linebacker. So how do you even get a guy like Alaka or Board playing time outside of special teams? I'm not really sure, but maybe there's an injury or maybe like I said, they don't make the roster week 1.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It'll definitely be interesting to see what happens. This thing is not a finished product, I don't think, by any means. Mm-mm. So those are all the news and notes I got. I think all the news and notes you got. Yep. Let us know what your guys' thoughts are. Were you surprised about the Huntley, McSorley over Tyler Huntley? We cited that were you surprised about the tight ends? I think that was my number one most surprising thing. We have 2 tight ends on the roster that we were wrong about both those guys. Yep. But let us know your guys' thoughts. And as I mentioned at the beginning, go ahead and subscribe, hit that button, and leave us a comment, and we'll be sure to interact with you. And we'll see you guys soon.
See you.